Michael?
Well, it's going to be very tight, as you mentioned. There's 5, probably more like 7 or 9 senators who have concerns. I'm optimistic because I think those different camps are looking at different parts of the bill. The conservatives are looking at what's going on with the regulations, the ability to bring down premiums. Some of the moderates are looking at the Medicaid expansion. In a negotiating situation, when people want different things changed, there is a Pareto optimal. There is an outcome where people can, as the president said this morning, maybe not love the bill, but like it. And I think I'm optimistic that they'll get there.
Jen?
I thought it was notable that the president reached out to Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, a Democrat. It's clear that they're very concerned about the 5, and they don't believe that they can change Senator Rand Paul's mind or Senator Mike Lee's mind. That's 2. They can only afford to lose 2. So they are looking at Democrats that they can sway, but Senator Manchin has said that he will vote against the bill.
Well, Josh, you've been in the leadership operation over there on the Republican side. Do you think there's a hope in Hades that any Democrat will come over? Senator Durbin said he couldn't identify one to vote for this bill.
You know, I think this Democratic Party is not your grandfather's Democratic Party. I think they're going to oppose Donald Trump at every possible corner, no matter what, and basically no matter what the policy outcome is. But I share Michael's optimism. I think they're going to get there next week. I really do. If you look at the statements that the senators have made, they've had every opportunity to draw a hard line and say no, and they're leaving themselves some wiggle room. And I think they're having conversations over this weekend that hopefully will send that in the right direction.
Bob, your thoughts?
I think it's kind of a fantasy-based debate on all sides here, and I don't see how you put it together. I mean, people talk abstractly about Medicaid. That is the health insurance program for the poor, right, for the people who can't afford health insurance. And you now have a system where they're, at least a proposal in the Senate of saying, hey, we'll take them off Medicaid and then they can buy insurance, but they don't have the money to do it. There's an absurdity in this.
It's kind of incredible, both in Senator Durbin's comments and Bob's. If the Democrat Party wants to become the party of Medicaid, I don't think it's going to have a lot of success in the 21st century. Medicaid was a program designed in the middle of the last century where health outcomes between people on Medicaid and the completely uninsured are exactly the same. Actually, on some procedures, you're more likely to die if you're on Medicaid than if you're uninsured. What's happened was that Medicaid was originally a very targeted program for certain vulnerable populations, people like the disabled, that Barack Obama then poured millions of able-bodied poor people onto the program, the able-bodied. What will happen at the end of this process, if you compare where was this country 8 years ago to where would this country be if this bill passed, is we'll be more compassionate, we'll be spending more money on vulnerable populations while not propping up a failing program from the middle of the last century. That's what a modern 21st century policy agenda looks like. If Bob and the Democrats want to be the party of Medicaid, let's take it to the elections.
No, wait a minute. I mean, that's unfair. I'm saying, look, there's a critique of Medicaid that can be made, and you made it, but to fix it this way when you've got tens of millions of people on it and say, now you can buy health insurance.
Well, wait a minute. Hold on. Let me just interject. Isn't this the age-old story with entitlement programs, which is to say that once you put an entitlement program in place, people then turn to it and become dependent on it in a way they might not otherwise have done, and then you end up in the situation you're always in where you got this exploding costs and people worried about losing it. And the result is you have this national debt through the roof, and you can never seem to take it away.
That's absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the way that healthcare has developed over the last 50 years in this country, it has taken a significant lurch to the left. And the reason it has is exactly what you just outlined, is that Democrats have an incremental way of getting to their ultimate goal, which is socialized, nationalized, single-payer system. So you create an entitlement program for the elderly, an entitlement program for the young, an entitlement program for the poor, and then ever expand eligibility for all three. And that's what we've got here today.
Jen?
Look at the numbers. There are 11 million more people on Medicaid since Obamacare was introduced. It's been a 30% rise in terms of those on Medicaid. If you look at the costs, Last year, the federal government spent $389 billion on Medicaid. In the next 10 years, that will go up to $650 billion. These numbers are staggering.
Yeah, unsustainable perhaps.
It's perhaps unsustainable, but look at where the greatest pushback in terms of the Senate bill is coming from, and it's coming from Republican senators or governors who are up for re-election this year or next, because they know that they have hundreds of thousands of new Medicaid voters on the rolls who are going to lose that coverage, and they are very scared of that population.
All right, that raises this question. Michael, let's address the politics of this. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that they cobble together a bill along the lines of somewhere between the House and Senate bills that do these things. Both do similar things with Medicaid. What are the political consequences in the 2018 midterms?
Well, I think that it depends whether the party is capable of making the compassionate case for what's going on. I mean, when you look at this, there was a cruel element of Barack Obama's Medicaid expansion that said the federal government is going to give more money to states for the able-bodied populations that they pass versus the populations that are more vulnerable, which caused many states to start ignoring or shifting their programs to care more about the able-bodied than the vulnerable. That's not compassionate, that's cruel, and I think that needs to be pulled back.
I understand. So what you're basically saying, though, is if they can make the right argument, they can avoid the political damage.
I think they can. I mean, I think the biggest threat that they have is that this is not a repeal bill. And so they've spent 8 years telling people that they're going to repeal Obamacare. It doesn't, and they're going to have problems on their right flank about that.
So they're going to, if I have this right, you got people on the right who think it doesn't do enough to repeal and replace Obamacare, and centrist Republicans who have centrist constituencies who think it's going to hurt too many people. How do you deal with that, Bob, politically?
But the resolution here is Senator McConnell, who can be the magician when it comes to putting something together to make a picture where the pieces in the puzzle don't fit. So maybe he's going to make it work.
Josh, your thoughts on that?
No, I think that's right. I mean, this is a delicate balance. It is an extremely delicate balance to get the right and the left of the party on the same page with no margin of error. But I think that this bill is there, and the alternative, just so we're clear, the alternative to 51 votes is Obamacare.
Yeah, I get that. Now, so what would be the consequences? So we've discussed the consequences of the bill passing, which look difficult, right, politically.
Almost impossible.
What about the consequences of not passing a bill?
Well, if they don't pass it, they're going to have to go back to their constituents in 2018 and explain. The Republicans are going to have to explain why they didn't do what they said they were going to do, repeal and replace. But I would point out that the Senate bill is rather clever because the Medicaid cuts come in 2021. That's after not only the 2018 elections, but also the 2020.
Okay, so let's boil this down to a simple question. Which is just in raw political terms, without getting into the substance, in political terms, which is worse, passing the bill politically or not passing it? Michael?
I think that politically and from a policy standpoint, the world is a better place if this bill passes than if it doesn't. There's still going to be a lot of work to be done.